Welcome to the news update on AFRICUNIA television, bringing you updates from around the world from our studio in the nation's commercial capital, Lagos, Nigeria. My name is Deborah Ezeh. We begin from the Nigerian scene. Presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar's decision to pick Delta State Governor Okowa as his running mate was long in coming despite the several detours to yesterday's official proclamation. At the party National Caucus meeting attended by 3 other governors and other prominent leaders of the party, Atiku said Okowa's choice was a very difficult decision in view of the fact that the other 2 persons whose names were submitted to him were equally qualified. Making the clarifications yesterday, Ayu said though the party submitted the names of the 3 governors, only the presidential candidates had the power to choose from among the shortlisted list. It was gathered that after the media published the reports that the vetting committee favored Wike, the pressure was brought to bear on Atiku by party leaders opposed to the Rivers governor to reject the report. Those opposed to their recommendation of Wike argued that it would not be a good sell to the north because of his hard stance against the Buhari administration, particularly the court case against the Federal Inland Revenue Service regarding the collection of value-added tax (VAT). But in selection, Okowa Atiku noted that the support of every party leader would be required to keep the PDP united. He said party unity is critical not only for us to prosecute a winning campaign, but also to provide good governance that our country seriously deserves and our people earnestly yearn for. And now moving on, as the deadline for the submission of candidates to the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) expired today, trouble almost engulfed the National Secretariat of the ruling All Progressives Congress (APC) yesterday over the alleged substitution of candidates. Aggrieved candidates from Kogi, Enugu, Abia, and Imo states besieged the party secretariat to register their anger with the Senator Abdullahi Adamu-led National Working Committee over the development. Heavily armed security personnel had to hurriedly ferry Adamu away from the party secretariat to avoid an unsavory experience in the hands of aggrieved candidates and their supporters. Scores of supporters of some of the candidates who attempted to force their way into the premises of the party secretariat chanted war songs to register their displeasure over the development. He further alleged that the party leadership had perfected plans to substitute their names with their favored aspirants for inexplicable reasons. And still in Nigeria, 35 teenage girls have been rescued from a hotel in southeastern Nigeria where a trafficking ring was forcing them into prostitution. Children birthed to these girls are sold, according to local police. The girls aged between 14 and 17 were rescued from the Gali Gali Hotel in Anambra State, where they were used as sex slaves for prostitution and baby making. Local police spokesman Tochukwu Ikenga said in a statement yesterday evening. 4 of the girls were pregnant, he said, adding that weapons and cash had been recovered by the police. 3 men were arrested at the scene while the owner of the hotel is on the run, the police added. Human trafficking, which includes forced prostitution and the sale of children, is the 3rd most common crime in Nigeria, behind corruption and drug trafficking, according to the United Nations. Southeastern Nigeria is particularly affected by trafficking in women and children, and several illegal maternity wards have been discovered in this part of the country in recent years. And moving on, Tunisia has protested Thursday in support of the country's main union, which called for a 1-day nationwide strike. Outside the headquarters of the Tunisian General Labour Union, protesters' salary hikes and concession on looming reforms. It is estimated that up to 3 million workers could observe the strike, closing state agency and public companies. Employment Minister Nasruddin Nsibi said the government reserved the right to requisition some workers to allow essential service to operate. The strike comes at a time when President Kais Saied faces intense criticism for excluding opposition political forces from his national dialogue. The UGTT was invited to take part in the talks, but refused on the grounds that key political forces were not included. It also argued that the processes aimed to push through conclusion decided unilateral in advance. Now up next are more headlines making the rounds on the African scene. Stay with me. Now on to the foreign scene. Britain hosted talks on rebuilding key infrastructure in Kyiv today, a day after the leaders of Germany, France and Italy visited Ukraine and offered it the hope of EU membership as it battles a ferocious Russian offensive in the east. Air raid siren blood as French President Emmanuel Macron, German Olaf Scholz and Italy Mario Draghi visited the Ukrainian capital and a nearby town wrecked early in the war. After holding talks with President Volodymyr Zelensky, the leaders signaled that Ukraine should be granted European Union candidate status, a symbolic gesture that would draw Kyiv closer to the economic bloc. Scholz said Germany has taken in 800,000 Ukrainian refugees and will continue to support Ukraine as long as it's needed. Britain will welcome representatives from Ukraine and business leaders on Friday to discuss how British companies can help rebuild key infrastructure in Kyiv. And moving on, the World Trade Organization's 164 members approved a series of trade agreements earlier on today that included commitments on fish and pledges on health and food security after more than 5 grueling days of negotiation. The deals were ground out over 5 days of bargaining at a conference of more than 100 trade ministers that was seen as a test of the ability of nations to strike multilateral trade deals and geopolitical tensions heightened by the Ukraine war. Delegates cheered after they passed the package of 6 agreements just before dawn on Friday. And Director General Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala told them the package of agreements you've reached will make a difference to the lives of people around the world. The outcomes demonstrate that the WTO is in fact capable of responding to emergencies over time. Earlier, she had appealed to WTO members to consider the delicate balance required after nearly round-the-clock talks that were extended for an extra 2 days and have at times been charged with anger and accusation. The package, which Okonjo-Iweala called unprecedented, included the 2 highest profile deals under consideration on fishery and on a partial waiver of intellectual property rights for COVID-19 vaccine. And now, still on the foreign scene, protesters in India threw stones at police and set fire to train coaches on Friday as demonstrations against a new military recruitment process raged for its second day. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government announced this week an overhaul of the recruitment process for the 1.38 million strong armed forces, aimed to bring in more people on short 4-year contracts to lower the average age of personnel. But many potential recruits object, saying they should be allowed to serve longer than 4 years. Opposition parties and some members of the Modi-ruling Bharatiya Janata Party say the system will lead to more unemployment in the country grappling with joblessness. Police fired shots into pushback stone-throwing crowds in the northern state of Haryana. Protesters gathered again on Friday, touching train coaches in at least 2 stations in the eastern states of Bihar and disrupted rail services. We now look at COVID-19 updates around the world. In the Asia-Pacific, Beijing on Thursday declared an initial victory in its latest battle with COVID-19 after testing millions of people and quarantining thousands in the past week to stem an outbreak prolonged by a sudden wave of cases linked to a bar. And also, mainland China reported 157 new coronavirus cases for June 16, of which 54 were symptomatic and 103 were asymptomatic, the National Health Commission said on Friday. And in Europe, the Omicron variant of coronavirus is less likely to cause long COVID than previous variants, according to the first peer-reviewed study of its kind from the United Kingdom. And the Swiss Parliament failed to finance the government's plan to buy COVID-19 vaccine in 2023, forcing the cabinet to try to renegotiate contracts with Moderna and Pfizer Biotech for millions of doses. Now in the Americas, the United States Ambassador to China, Nicholas Burns, said on Thursday he expects Beijing's zero-COVID policy to persist into early 2023. And the U.S. businesses were reluctant to invest in the country until restriction ease. Also, Chilean President Gabriel Jesus suspended in-person activities for the remainder of the week due to a viral infection and side effects from a 4th dose of the coronavirus vaccine he received earlier in the week. Now away from that scene onto the sports scene, Stephen Curry produced another outstanding performance as the Golden State Warrior beats the Boston Celtics to become the champions in Game 6 of the NBA Final. Curry bounced back from disappointing Game 5 display, an outliner in a magnificent series of the Warrior superstars, to lead his team to a 103-90 victory at the TD Garden in Boston, sealing a full title in the 8 years for the franchise. It comes just 2 seasons after the Warrior had the league worst record, and the Strive completed a journey like no other after a run of 5 consecutive finals, then a plummet to the bottom of the NBA, and now a return to greatness. And finally, Arsenal are in talks to sign Manchester City striker Gabriel Jesus. The Premier League champions want or do not want to lose Jesus, but understand his desire to get regular first-team football. The arrival of Erling Haaland and Julian Alvarez are likely to reduce his playing time at City. The 25-year-old scored 13 goals last season and contributed 12 assists from 28 starts in all competition. He arrived at the club from Brazil's side Palmeiras in 2016 and has gone on to net 95 times in 236 appearances. And that concludes the news update from us on AFRICUNIA television. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay connected and up to date to our news and other programs. Follow all our social media platforms on Jointon, Pangram, Instagram, Facebook, and on Twitter in that respective order. Once again, I am Deborah Ezeh. Have a beautiful weekend.